Because of marketing, we on press conference calling to how we open the book. I know. So,
Được, vâng, ban tổ chức trân trọng kính mời các đại biểu quý đồng nghiệp của đến tham dự chương trình hội thảo hôm nay. Chúng ta tập trung vào trong hội trường để chương trình hội thảo từ sáng nay sẽ bắt đầu. Một lần nữa ban tổ chức trân trọng kính mời quý đại biểu quý đồng nghiệp chúng ta cùng đến tham dự chương trình hội thảo với hôm nay. Xin mời quý vị tập trung hội trường để chương trình chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu. Của chương trình hội thảo hôm nay, trân trọng giới thiệu phó giáo sư tiến sĩ bác sĩ Phạm Thọ Tuấn Anh, nguyên trưởng bộ môn phẫu thuật tim mạch động lực Đại học Y Dược Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, chủ tọa hội thảo. Trân trọng giới thiệu giáo sư tiến sĩ Trần Quý Tiến, phó trưởng khoa Y Đại học Quốc gia Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, nguyên phó giám đốc bệnh viện Chợ Rẫy, chủ tọa. I am honored to introduce Professor Neil Terry Medical Center, Jerusalem, Israel. I am honored to introduce Dr. Oh Wei Sung, Medical Director, International Cancer Specialist, Singapore. Trân trọng giới thiệu tiến sĩ bác sĩ Nguyễn Duy Sinh, Viện Di truyền Y học Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh. Trân trọng giới thiệu thạc sĩ bác sĩ chuyên khoa 2 Nguyễn Triệu Vũ, trưởng khoa ung bướu Bệnh viện Thành phố Thủ Đức. Trân trọng giới thiệu thạc sĩ bác sĩ chuyên khoa 2 Nguyễn Kim Anh, trưởng khoa ngoại lồng ngực mạch máu Bệnh viện Thành phố Thủ Đức. Và trân trọng giới thiệu bác sĩ chuyên khoa 2 Lê Thụy Phương Hồng, Bệnh viện Ung bướu Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh. Và đến tham dự chương trình hôm nay còn có các bác sĩ nhân viên y tế của Bệnh viện Thành phố Thủ Đức. Trân trọng giới thiệu Tiếp theo chương trình, ban tổ chức trân trọng kính mời các vị chủ tọa, các vị cố vấn khoa học, báo cáo viên của chương trình hội thảo. Trân trọng kính mời các vị báo cáo viên cùng tiến lên sân khấu. Ban tổ chức trân trọng kính mời tiến sĩ bác sĩ Vũ Trí Thanh, có các phụ trách quản lý điều hành bệnh viện sẽ tặng qua cho các vị chủ tọa, các vị cố vấn khoa học và báo cáo viên của chương trình hội thảo hôm nay.
Cái bài này là gì?
Chúng ta chờ một tràng pháo tay để cảm ơn các vị phụ tọa cũng như các vị cố vấn học và các vị đến dự chương trình ngày hôm nay. Trân trọng cảm ơn tiến sĩ bác sĩ Vũ Trí Thanh, trân trọng cảm ơn các vị phụ tọa cố vấn thông tin. Và tiếp nối chương trình, ban tổ chức trân trọng kính mời tiến sĩ bác sĩ Vũ Trí Thanh, phó giám đốc quản lý điều hành bệnh viện thành phố Thủ Đức, điều khai mạc chương trình hội thảo khoa học cập nhật tiến bộ trong điều kiện của phổi.
First of all, I'd like to welcome and extend my specialist to distinguished guest, teacher, expert, and colleagues on behalf of the board of directors of Thủ Đức City Hospital. Thank you very much for attending the scientific with the topic treatment update lung cancer symposium. As you know, lung cancer is the leading cause of the incident and mortality of malignant tumor children. Actually, people die. In Vietnam, lung cancer ranks second after liver cancer, with about 23,000 new cases and 20,000 deaths each year. Some factors that increase the risk of lung cancer are smoking, environmental pollution, occupation related radiation of asbestos, and genetics. Nowadays, with the advancement of medicine, the diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis of this cancer have been better. Treatment includes surgery, chemotherapy, chemotherapy, radiation, and drug. Screening is recommended if you are at high risk. Advance in treatment have caused a significant decline in the cancer death in recent years. Early detection combined with treatment can give the patient a good chance of successful treatment. Understanding the importance of updating management of the cancer in order to improve the quality of diagnosis and provide early and appropriate treatment regimen to take good care of the patient's health. Thủ Đức City Hospital holds this conference to exchange, learn knowledge, and share professional experience with teachers, experts, and colleagues of foreigner university and hospital. In that spirit, I'd like to announce the present today conference on the topic treatment update lung cancer symposium, which will include a report. I hope you all enjoy a productive day and get valuable experience from leading experts in the field of oncology. I'd like to express a gratitude and thank so much for the leader teacher, presenter, sponsor, and colleague. Wish you a lot of health, happiness, and new achievement in medical regeneration treatment, training, and scientific research. Once again, thank you very much.
Xin được cảm ơn tiến sĩ bác sĩ Vũ Trí Thanh. Và kính thưa quý vị, phần khai mạc của hội thảo sáng hôm nay đến đây là kết thúc. Trân trọng kính mời bác sĩ khoa 2 Nguyễn Trường Vũ, trưởng khoa 4 của bệnh viện Thành phố Thủ Đức sẽ điều phối chương trình hội thảo sáng hôm nay.
Anh trình bày luôn đúng không?
Thank you very much everyone for coming this morning, and thank you our guests from other countries as well as today, and also our thanks for the hospital and for sponsor and journalists on coming here today. So to begin this, go to slide 5 about the lung cancer in Vietnam, and just some slides to give you about the look about the lung cancer in Vietnam is, and so it's very So basically, the cancer patient keep increasing over time. During the 2018, there are about 18 million new cases, about 9.5 deaths with cancer in 2018, and estimated that in the 2040, there are about nearly 29 new cases, about 15.2 million deaths with cancer worldwide. So lung cancer always is the most common cancer in both female and male patients. So how about Vietnam? So this is the data from Vietnam. So in Vietnam, in 2020, we have about 182,000 new cases and about 182 deaths due to cancer in Vietnam in 2020. Lung cancer is one of the most lethal cancer in Vietnam and also worldwide. For new cases in the 2020, Vietnam we have about 20,000 new cases, and globally we have about 2.2 million. And in Vietnam we have about nearly 24,000 deaths due to lung cancer, and 1.7 million deaths due to cancer worldwide, and about more than 2/3 of the patients are diagnosed in the advanced stage 3 and 4. And the average 5-year lung cancer survival in Vietnam is just about 50%. More than 80% of the cases are non-small cell lung cancer, approximately 70% of which are adenocarcinoma. So lung cancer screening. So just a few weeks ago, the Ministry of Health approved over screening for uterine cervix and breast cancer. In 2015, the Ministry of Health issued a national strategy for the prevention of community disease for 10 years, which included cancer. And we were updated last year with the aim to screen cancer of the breast, colon, uterine cervix for at least 40% of the suitable by the year 2025. But I doubt that. I'm not sure of that. It's already no screening program for lung, colorectal, prostate. Yes, just burning from medical private hospital and clinic, and low dose test not covered by insurance and party. So for breast cancer, early detection, the breast vision by one of the three tests, like clinical breast examination, breast ultrasound, and mammography, so it depends on the local equipment and expertise. So we into one of three tests. And also for uterine cervix, we can use a visual inspection of the cervix by the acetic acid with the Lugon iodide, but here actually testing depend on local expertise. So last year, with the help from AstraZeneca, so we do the jet X-ray with the artificial intelligence in the diagnostic of jet X-ray. So this is the data. So with 6 hospitals and clinics, so we do a totally about 5,000 jet X-ray, and we discover about 5,900. So doing all the X-ray account for about 16.7%, and the number of jet X-ray in detailed pulmonary nodule with high risk of malignancy at about 335, nearly 1% of the total X-ray.
Anh cái chuyện continue.
So this is the data from our hospital. So our hospital perform about nearly 21,000 jet X-rays, and we discover about 4,500 pulmonary X-ray, which account for about 21.3%, and about 90 X-ray have some pulmonary high risk, account for about 0.4%. So because of the data, there's some overlap. So we have about 100 cases of suspected on the X-ray. So we do the CAT scan in about 23 of the cases, and we have suspected cancer about 14 cases, and we do biopsy only in 8 patients. This to be management in 6 and usually examination patients. So the important thing is this is not a screening trial. This is completely not a screening trial. This is a hospital-based diagnostic jet X-ray with AI. So it's not a screening trial. And the data is scattering, and obviously we need a longer follow-up to see if the AI can help in or pulmonary or not. So can AI with just X-ray design the low dose can be not sure. We don't know yet because the AI with just X-ray seems very promising, but also we need more trial. So the AI with just X-ray can replace the low dose testing. It's very helpful because it's very convenient, it's cheaper, it's much simpler to perform, and available everywhere. So when a patient may have different biologic features, like study on a 360 patient with non-small cell lung cancer, and about 35.4% have EGFR mutation, 23% have KRAS, 7% have ALK, 2% have ROS1 and BRAF and other mutations. Ví sao ba cái ba xung quanh
It's a complementary information for full biopsies. Of course, if there is a tissue that it would be difficult to approach, like a tiny needle, or it is in a deep area, you can use a liquid biopsy. And of course, on disease progression, you may have an idea of what the resistant mutation looks like. So this is what we have on the diagnosis. You can have a preliminary diagnosis and tumoral DNA. The patient is responding to therapy. You see that the amount of DNA goes down, and then if it goes up, so there is a progression, and you can profile the disease again for further analysis. There are different subtypes of liquid biopsies, including that would be the most common circulating tumoral DNA. That's the most common platform and available, I would say, even while using the current technologies that you are having for solid NGS. Circulating tumor cells was used to be one of the more dominant platforms, but nowadays we are using it less and less. And there is a growing data showing that exosome extraction from blood may also support some of the molecular profiling of tumor, which means that the tumor releases some DNA particles coated with a lipid membrane that goes to the bloodstream. And you can capture those liposomes or exosomes by very simple, actually, technologies. How do we detect circulating free DNA? So normally we use those tubes, named Streck tubes, that you take the blood and you can keep it even for 7 days, and you can ship it, all over the globe. You can send it to other countries, and if it comes within 5 to 7 days to the lab, it will be reliable enough, and you can sequence the DNA in a good manner. There was a recent publication that we put for liquid biopsy in advanced non-small cell lung cancer. It was published in the Journal of Thoracic Oncology, and we compare the different technologies that are being used for molecular profiling. And I would invite you to go to this article in the JPO 2 years ago, and it will cover many of the technologies that are available and also can be done here based on PCR or even other technologies. Basically, there are a few platforms that may be used, like real-time PCR, digital PCR, which is cheaper, I would say, in some ways, and also NGS that has higher sensitivity and the ability to detect very low allele frequencies by an NGS. Of course, it is kind of a dynamic target, and the technology for liquid biopsy is really moving forward and can bypass actually many of the obstacles that we are facing nowadays when we are trying to understand what are the clonality mixture of the patient. Because the liquid biopsy will give you kind of a general picture of all the clones that the patient has, not only the one that you capture on the needle biopsy. So the circulating free DNA diagnosis, you see here that the rate of positivity on the liquid biopsy is higher in patients. You see that it is about 25%, and for fusion, the detection is a bit lower. But of course, you can use this platform to get a diagnosis. It's highly specific, and you can treat upon a positive finding when you have it. So the question is, can we treat upon a liquid positivity? So the answer is definitely yes. We can prescribe drugs upon positive liquid platform that has been also approved, for example, many years ago, 2016, that we can put patients on erlotinib, Tresiba, upon a positive EGFR platform on the blood test. So we should not repeat the tissue biopsy once we have a positive liquid EGFR platform. Also, the FDA has approved the platform of next-gen sequence based on blood tests. And as you see here, it got kind of an NGS-based platform, which is as good as solid. So you are okay to treat patients based on liquid results. What about turnaround time? Because this is also one of the obstacles, because it will take time until you get results from molecular profiling when you use a tissue. So we compared here, we performed a local study, and we compared, we took a naive non-small cell lung cancer patient. And for all patients, we ordered solid NGS versus liquid NGS on the same minute. What we have seen is that out of those patients that have a liquid biopsy, actionable mutation was found in 15 patients, and all patients were analyzed. Same patients, out of 42 patients, the solid has found actionable mutation in a similar number, even one less. So it means this is even more sensitive compared to that, but liquid biopsy did not miss any of the solid ones. So, and the tissue was insufficient in 5 patients. So for those 5 patients, liquid biopsy was really kind of a solution. Let's skip this one. What about the turnaround time? I think this is the most important part. And we see that when we use the blue is the liquid and the orange is the solid. And you see that liquid biopsy was pretty much stable, and it was an overseas platform. So it has to be shipped to the States in this platform. And you see that even though that the tubes have to travel to overseas, the results came in much faster compared to local solid NGS. That took sometimes even like more than 1.5 months. What about disease monitoring by liquid biopsy? Of course, the tumor is changing over time, and it's not only changing, it's also like we have kind of a selection inhibition of part of the clone. So if we cover by Tresiba or erlotinib or osimertinib, an EGFR clone, there will be a new clone that emerge across this coverage. And the ability to overcome is based on our ability to diagnose the clones. And I would like to share with you some examples. So what we do here, this is, for example, a guy that have performed numerous liquid biopsies across the disease journey. This is a 67-year-old male, 35 PEC years, adenocarcinoma, strongly positive PD-L1 that has had a c-Met/SCID protein mutation. He was diagnosed in 2016. It was really a while ago. And you see here that at the beginning, there was only a c-Met/SCID mutation. No other mutations. So he was treated by crizotinib for about 1.5 years. That was the primary PET scan. This is what happens later. And here on a liquid biopsy after 1.5 years, that we have had some at the beginning good responses and some progression. He has developed some resistant clones like this D1228 in the point mutation. So at that time, it was in November 2018, he got pembrolizumab for nearly 2 years. It is a c-Met positive patient, and those patients do have some responses to immunotherapy. And after all, he was functioning very well across all that time until he had some brain progression. And see what is interesting here that we perform a liquid biopsy at that time. You see that even though that he was not blocking the CMET, we have had new clones related to the CMET, like all those, the 1228, 1238, 1163, and others. Those normally supposed to be some clones that are resistant to crizotinib. At that time, we did not have yet the treatments, the new therapies for CMET, like capmatinib, tepotinib. We put him on back on crizotinib, and you see the shrinkage of the allele frequency of this patient under CMET inhibition. So actually, the liquid biopsy allows you to monitor the disease in a very interesting, in a very interesting way that actually fluctuate the status in the patient's study. Another case that I would like to share with you is also, it is good that it is not a new one, so you can actually, it might be similar, I would say, in what happens here, because the availability of drugs in Vietnam at the moment is like, I would say, 10 years, like in a delay of 10 to even 15 years compared to what we have in other countries. So this is a patient that was diagnosed in October 2013 as a stage 3B, chemo-RT, and a severe brain lesion that was radiated with stereotactic radiosurgery. Of course, she was stage 4, right, because of the brain lesion. And less than 6 months, the liver lesions and bone lesions were diagnosed, and unfortunately, she went through all the radiation that we do not do today. Those days, we nearly do not see any patients that get organ radiation, especially for ET complications. So she was on gefitinib, and she was responding very well. However, a year later, as you would expect, she had some systemic progression. So we were looking for T790M positivity. The liver biopsy was negative for T790M, and therefore we performed a liquid biopsy. And the liquid biopsy actually was very interesting. You see, it was positive for T790M. It was positive for the primary exon 19 mutation, but also there was kind of an uncommon mutation in exon 18, G724S. So it means that you are not treating any more lung cancer, and you are not treating EGFR positive, you are treating like sub-clones. And you have to go into details. What type of mutation is existing? So at that time, we were very happy that she had the T790M positivity. That was her PET scan before she started osimertinib. And 2 weeks later, she had a very nice response to the EGFR. All the bone lesions were actually disappeared. And however, the response was not full enough, and we still have some progression. And I will remind you that the liver lesion that was biopsied was T790M negative. So thinking or rethinking, you actually say that, okay, this is not a surprise that this lesion was not responding to osimertinib because it is T790M negative, which means that we do have a true heterogeneity in this patient, that part of the disease would respond to osimertinib, and part is still kicking. We repeated the liquid biopsy, and what we have seen that the T790M went down to undetected level, and see what happens to this exon 18 submutation. It went up significantly by 100-fold. So it's clear that that would be an issue down the road. We took the liver biopsy and we sent it to Foundation Medicine at that time. NGS was not available everywhere. And what we had seen that the liver biopsy that was negative for P70 on the tissue was positive for this exon 18 mutation, the 724. So actually it is originated from the liver lesion. And at that time, this is exon 18, and therefore we used afatinib combined with osimertinib to knock down also the other clone. And luckily, you see that by combining afatinib and osimertinib, like two EGFR blockers, we also reduce the clone of the G724 by, again, to 0.3 with a very significant response on the PET scan. So actually, the liquid biopsy allows you to go to higher resolution and to tailor the treatment in a better way. However, the disease was progressed, and even though we blocked the two subclones and the patient has developed the C797S, and she passed away a few months later, even though she was treated by chemotherapy. Another usage of liquid biopsy is also presented in the FLAURA study that shows actually a randomized head-to-head trial of osimertinib as a first-line EGFR positive that we are using nowadays as a basic. And what is interesting here, that if we focus on the liquid biopsy, we see that those patients with a significant eradication of the positivity of the circulating free DNA will have a better actually prognosis and outcome. We also know from this study that if we monitor circulating free DNA across the disease, we may predict the resist progression by 3 to even 6 months. So if we see a gradual increase, and you see this is the resist progression, the blue one, and the green one is the first time that the liquid biopsy became positive after it became negative. So we always can do something to the clone before we see progression of the CT scan. So molecular profiling is important. What about resistance to osimertinib? I will go it quickly. This is a study that we have published last year. I think it was 2 years ago. Also patients with EGFR positive that were treated by osimertinib first and second line. On progression, we performed the liquid biopsy. What we have seen that we can actually profile the type of progression in those patients. And what is important that we have treated some of the patients based on the new molecular profiling. And as you see here, this is patients that increased the dose of osimertinib because there were no specific mutation. And this patient, for example, was able to be even nearly a year on this double dose. We reduced the dose then again, and we've added chemotherapy on top of Tagrisso to this patient because of lack of specific submutation. The patient actually was responding very well and with a prolonged survival. And what is also interesting to see that those patients with MET amplification, this is like purple, maybe color or pink, you see that those patients that some of the patients got a combination of EGFR blockade plus c-MET inhibition. They did have some progression, but the survival was not good enough. I mean, we did see responses, but the survival was not good. But at least it may indicate the potential usage of molecular profiling or resistance. And last but not least, a very short slide on minimal residual disease, which I think this is where we go. At the moment, we do like surgery. I mean, I've heard that not all the surgeons take out the lymph nodes, so this is a highly important, of course. And if you take all the tumor out, you should discriminate between those patients with or without minimal residual disease. In order to diagnose minimal residual disease, the best way is to go through a blood test. And there are two types of minimal residual disease platforms that are existing today, like a high sensitivity, not only ctDNA. One is Signatera, which is based on the tissue profile, and the other is based on DNA methylation unrelated to the tissue profile. So just to share with you the study of Checkmate 186 with nivolumab, you see that the circulating free DNA clearance rate was much higher in nivolumab compared to chemotherapy, and also it was higher in those patients with pathological complete response compared to those with chemotherapy. But what I would like to show you is more interesting in the IMpower study that we were using adjuvant immunotherapy for patients post-op, is that patients with ctDNA positivity had a worse prognosis compared to patients with negative ctDNA, which means that this is kind of a staging procedure. The circulating free DNA in this case, based on Signatera platform, shows you that this is a prognostic biomarker, but also the impact of immunotherapy was much stronger when you have a Signatera platform positive or MRD positive platform. So this is, if you can spare some expenses, for example, you would better treat those patients with positive compared to negative MRD. And this is the 1 year that atezolizumab is highly expensive if it is come out of pocket. Just to share with you the usage of Signatera platform in the clinical practice. This is a 76 years old never smoker patient. This is actually was not Signatera, it was ctDNA death. Had a lobectomy. She was a stage 3A, EGFR positive. Liquid after lobectomy was positive. So it is clear that she does have a residual disease, right? She got adjuvant chemo, liquid biopsy stayed positive after the chemo. Therefore, we put her on Tagrisso, and since then she has no ctDNA detected. So actually, the Tagrisso knocked down the circulating free DNA, and she is okay. So my take-home message is that the data of liquid is really solid. ctDNA is faster compared to solid DNA. Circulating free DNA is reliable, but of course it depends on shedding. And upfront liquid allows better disease management. And I think the question would be not if we can go liquid first. The question should be if we can go by liquid only. But I think this is not, we are not ready yet, right? But I believe definitely that this is the way to go in the next future. So thank you so much. And I think we move to the next discussion, right?
Thank you, Professor Philip. And I think if you have any questions, we can have 1 or 2 quick questions. If we don't have any questions, so thank you, Dr. Dibenet, for a very informative and interesting presentation. I would like to ask, I'm really interested in how you are monitoring the disease with ctDNA. I mean, the frequency that you use ctDNA to monitoring the disease, and
about the cost of practice is to apply question.
I think this is so this is really a very important question, and I think cost depends on where you do the test. I definitely sure that those platforms are going to be with the kids. So maybe the medical genetics staff can provide you with local platforms that will be much cheaper. Now, monitoring biomarkers the decision about how frequent you do the monitoring should be, or are you going to change treatment upon the result? And I think that at the moment we do monitor. This is okay. So you see, the rectors always have a bit of microphones. So I think where were we? I mean at the moment we do liquid monitoring upon progression. So if the patient has a clinical progression and we would like to skip a biopsy and we would like to explore what are the other subclones that are developed, so we use a liquid biopsy. And also another point that we may have a liquid biopsy is after surgery. So you would like to get a positive, you will change your practice upon the results. If the patient has kind of a chronic treatment and he is stable, practically at the moment there is no need to do a liquid biopsy. Unless he has a kind of a progression, there are still under study some patients that perform every 3-6 months to see that there is some clone evolution, but I'm not sure that it will have a positive impact on survival. So at the moment, I will do it only on clinical progression. Any other questions?
So the next speaker, I would like to interview Dr. Nguyễn Duy Sinh from Gene Solution from Philippine City. So Dr. Sinh will tell about the application of the ctDNA in diagnosis and treatment of non-small cell lung cancer. And Dr. Sinh is also well experienced radiation oncologist and also genetic expert. So Dr. Sinh, go ahead.
On behalf of medical institute and Gene Solution, thank you so much for Dr. Phan and Dr. Vũ here for presenting. The title of my presentation is application of circulating tumor DNA for early cancer detection and also the cancer treatment in our Vietnamese parents. So,
anh đồng thợ bấm lui kia lúc này nha. Anh đợi ok bấm này nha. Em hết đi. Sorry. Okay. Sao lúc đầu em làm pin
lại cuối không?
Rồi sao slide cuối không kìa? Yeah.
I just move quickly from the global cancer burden over the world and in Vietnam, and just to focus that 1% caused by cancer. And so we, in the global one 2022 in Vietnam, you can see the lung cancer is also the most common cancer in female and in male in Vietnam. And the reason why we have the early detection is very basically that we can improve the survival of cancer with the early cancer detection, and we can increase 4 to 5 times of survival between the local and metastasis stage. So before I can focus in the ctDNA, I just remind you that in our legal aspect, we have the approximation in the linear progression based on tumor imaging, but in somehow we can approach by tumor marker. But you know that tumor marker is not a good indicator because there's some very low quantitative predictive value. So now in over the world, we must focus on the gene mutation. And now I just clarify how can we apply gene in cancer early detection and monitoring cancer. So and I also sharing with you the cell-free DNA. Cell-free DNA, just a fragment of DNA has been released in our bloodstream, maybe by called the cell senescence, but tumor also releases DNA in bloodstream, and we so-called circulating tumor DNA. So how can we differentiate between ctDNA and cell-free DNA? So based on many mechanisms, such as apoptosis, necrosis, and direction, we can define some indicator what important are upon mutation, copy number alteration, and methylation change. Especially methylation change is one of the mechanisms of epigenetic. They modify the mating radical in the promoter or enhancer to how to turn on and turn off expression of DNA. So now the meaning of ctDNA changing in cancer, I can summarize in this imaging that with the cancer ctDNA we can early cancer detection and also monitor the progression of cancer based on the molecular profiling and monitor detection of residual disease and also monitoring clonal evolution when treatment in advanced stage. So as you know that with the conventional early cancer detection, we have some disadvantages. I can share with you that somehow in Vietnam and over the world, screening not available for all patients, and we just screen for all the kinds of cancer. Some tests, just for example, low density radiation exposure and some endoscopy invasive protocol. And the most important disadvantage is the high cumulative false positive rate. Until about 60% if patients have many cancer screening or repeated many times. So from over the world, they have a trending to apply some subgroup technique for cancer screening, so-called liquid biopsy via detecting of ctDNA, and this can be considered somehow simple, convenient, and accurate. So, and I will clarify in this later. So the most important thing that you wonder where is the discrepancy or difference between the multi-cancer early detection and conventional screening. So with conventional screening, we approach based on mostly based imaging, but in the liquid biopsy, we approach by the ctDNA, and that we give many models of machine learning for prediction the origin of tumor origin, and then we use apply the imaging later. This is we find the ctDNA and its origin. And the benefit of multi-organ screening has been summarized in some publication. It is shown that if you increase the prevalence of cancer by cancer screening, you can reduce the cost of the screening. For example, if you want to check liver cancer, you have to check about 600 people. But if there are only testing for universal cancer screening, you just check 33 people, and if you can increase the prevalence 3 times, you can acquire a high spot specificity 99%. It means the false positive will be the 1%. And in reality, in physical activity, we also apply some technique to do the multi-cancer early detection, just with your whole body CT scan or somehow whole body MRI, combining with the AI or machine learning. But this will make the high positive and expensive. And nowadays, especially in Southeast Asia, we know that the PET-CT is also a very high positive and high expensive, so we cannot apply PET-CT regarding the circulating tumor DNA. This is a very promising technique, but it's not available in clinical activity. So now we must focus in the circulating tumor DNA. And in Vietnam, we developed technology so-called SmartMap from 2018 to 2022, how to apply this technique for cancer early detection. Firstly, we just research in label based on the NGS and big data of about 20 cancer patients, and we build a model of machine learning to predict the cancer origin. And then we apply this model in the case control cohort and to determine the specificity and sensitivity of this step. And from the end of the 2021, we launched a cohort study with the 13 major in Vietnam, including the healthy people volunteer more than 40 years old to validate our test. And now from the early 2022, we extend our test in Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines. So I would like to share with you some features of our SmartMap technique. It included we determine 4 indicators of the ctDNA, including the 140 target genome. Vision methylation, and most of them are tumor secretory gene, and also include whole genome methylation. Another feature such as pregnant land, because the pregnant land of ctDNA is often shorter than the cell-free DNA, and also include DNA copy number and endpoint chip. So this is our very unique technique compared with another competitor over the world. And you see some of our publications regarding the frequency of discovering of SmartMap. So next, I will like to find some data regarding our development of SmartMap. So in the heat map, you can see that the methylation in the target field of colorectal cancer completely different with the healthy people. But in 22 we found that there are the hypomethylation occurring with healthy people, and the DNA of the healthy people, the cancer, colorectal cancer patient will be shorter than the healthy people. Another example in the hepatocellular carcinoma is one of the most common cancer in Vietnam. We can use the methylation target gene in this heat map so that the efficacy have the extreme methylation comparing with the healthy people in high risk, including HPV and SCV. And our test also can differentiate between the tumor size. Especially, we use ctDNA for prediction of cancer, and it is shown that compared with conventional diagnosis by AFP and imaging, the methylation combined with this step will be improve the prediction of cancer. So the next important, how can prediction of the tumor origin. So this is our algorithm to show how can we use machine learning for prediction of tumor origin. So we put many data of ctDNA and we use machine learning for the cohort of validation and discovery. And this graph shows that the sensitivity of the validation and discovery for 5 most common cancer has a very promising results. So in summary regarding the tumor origin, if we predict the tumor origin, we have more successful regarding the liver cancer, somehow promising in colorectal and gastric, but a little bit low in the breast cancer. But if we give two possibility of prediction, we acquire accuracy about 83%. So comparing with the very famous gallery now in the same determine the origin. And this is our result regarding the cohort study in the healthy people more than 40 years old with the accompanied with 13 major hospitals across Vietnam, and interim report show that the PPV of this format within 60% is the accuracy of this step is 83%. For example, can I share with you the SPOTMAT performance with the conventional indicator and PPV of SPOTMAT is a little bit higher compared with tumor marker, and with also the conventional imaging chest mammography low density and accuracy of tumor prediction is about 83%. For example, this is one of our volunteer in the K Fisher's. He had the blood sample from SPOTMAT that he showed that positive and tumor origin prediction in lung cancer. So, and then he had a CT scan and endoscopy, and this show that tumor is very focal on the retina, and also the lymph node metastasis and the pathology of the lymph node confirm the adenocarcinoma metastasis to lymph node. So the last one of the SPOTMAT, this is a project we applied for this guys of SPOTMAT. So firstly, we use SPOTMAT, but the gold standard of cancer patient should be imaging and biopsy. So if other case of positive, we will support people with imaging to finding the tumor, and based on the imaging, if other early suspected cancer, they should be held biopsy for confirming cancer. If are there only some problem because the biopsy negative or tumor cannot detect it in the positive case, these people will be supported by the ctDNA assessment and continue. But I just remind you that if 1 year after the second time of testing, if patient still positive, they should have a whole body CT scan and combine with breast MRI for female. So the next one, I will move to the application of ctDNA in the non-small cell lung cancer patient. So we can divide the two applications into two groups. First one, just mutation identify, and second is quantify the concentration of MRD for minimal residual disease. So I can divide into some difficult situation, but it's our non-small cell lung cancer in the database or the system, you can apply tissue or blood for actionable mutation in targeted therapy. And after 1 or 2 years, if they are the system, you can check the system mechanism. So, and I just also remind that in our Asian community, there are the difference between the EGFR mutation compared with the Caucasian. And how about in Vietnamese data, we use NGS to detect the actionable mutation in non-small cell lung cancer in Vietnam, and it showed that the EGFR mutation rate is about just 32%, but KRAS is about 20%. And this data we also show that the EGFR in Vietnam are a little bit lower comparing with East Asia, such as Korea and Japan. But the most exon we also including exon 19 and exon 21. With the 3,000 Vietnamese cancer patients, we also show the result of detection rate of EGFR and KRAS. I would like to share with you that the highest EGFR often in the female non-smoking, but the lowest in the male. But conversely, KRAS not common in the male with non-smoking. And we also validate our test is so-called OncoGS for the NGS, and it shows the specificity of tissue and liquid biopsy are almost the same, but the sensitivity of tissue is higher than liquid biopsy, and it is show that there are a good concurrence between the NGS comparing with the digital PCR, and this validate can be confirmed by the Sanger sequencing. So now we build up a comprehensive gene panel for 10 kinds of cancer in Vietnam, and in non-small cell lung cancer, besides some single nucleotide variants such as EGFR and KRAS, we also include some kind of fusion, just a NTRK fusion, MET fusion, and crossword. So in detail, some kind of we check in this gene panel. And also, if you have any resistance regarding the targeted therapy, we will apply for support for you with some kinds of detection in the system. And the last one is how can we apply the concentration of DNA for the monitoring of cancer patients based on the minimum residual material. So just remind you that the MRD is one of the terminology determine that if after the radical treatment, if the tumor disappears and we cannot detect tumor by imaging or by removal, in bloodstream is so-called MRD. So the meaning of the testing MRD that with there are the correlation between the MRD and tumor volume. So the lowest tumor volume, the highest, we have the possibility of cure. So how can we use MRD for testing cancer patients? And this is our in-house MRD comparing with method. It is so that we check tumor tissue with the NGS with the 150 most common cancer gene have been validated in the Vietnamese people, and we still want to stick the mutation with the highest variant allele frequency and consider this is a tumor specific. It means the mutational signature or rival mutation, and we compare with the tumor liquid biopsy, and if we detect any mutation matching with this 1 to 6 mutation, we can use liquid biopsy for monitoring cancer patients during progression. And this is because based on the liquid biopsy, so this test can repeatable. And this is our comprehensive gene panel regarding with MRD. And regarding the dynamic of MRD, it's very easy to consider that before the radical treatment, the ctDNA will be highest, and they will be lowest after the radical treatment about 4 weeks. And if other reason they turn back, we have some solution. So the critical situation too, you can now apply this test is that after the post-radical therapy, you use this field or post-therapy biopsy for adjuvant therapy. For you have evidence for adjuvant therapy or consolidation. It is so-called the predictive value For example, this is the randomized clinical trial in Japan from early 2023. It is shown that if the colorectal cancer high stage 2 high risk and stage 3, if the MRD negative, there are no benefit for chemotherapy, but with MRD post-op MRD positive, there are a very clear benefit with chemotherapy. And it is also shown that the clearance of MRD is very important for adjuvant of colorectal cancer. Another meaning that in non-small cell lung cancer, it is shown that after the stage 3 of non-small cell lung cancer of chemoradiation, if MRD negative, there are no benefits of immune checkpoint, such as durvalumab. But if MRD positive patient have the benefit with consolidation with durvalumab, and this is very important in this research, determining that if after the 3 cycle of ICI, increase of ICI will be the same progression-free with the no treatment, so you should be considered after the 3 cycle of development. The next situation is the patient who already finished the treatment, so MRD just for the surveillance is means that prognosis valid. And in some data in early non-small cell lung cancer show that if the patient still have the ctDNA negative, they are the worst freedom for progression, disease survival comparing with the ctDNA negative. So you can consider ctDNA as the indicator for monitoring. And in Vietnam, we also use that for monitoring in some publications. For example, in colorectal cancer, we use the MRD to detect ctDNA in the colorectal cancer. It shows that they will increase with staging, not situation, and it is some rival mutation in Vietnamese patient. And in the colorectal cancer, this graph shows that if patient has the ctDNA positive after treatment, they will relapse. For example, in the column C, it shows that the patient negative after surgery, but turn back positive after the chemotherapy, so they soon back to imaging recurrent. And also in the breast cancer, we have publication regarding application of ctDNA, and this result also the same with some care we follow up by the MRD for breast cancer. So the last one is the non-small cell lung cancer. Now, ctDNA you can use for monitoring some patient treated by immune checkpoint inhibitor, and this is the meaning for the evaluate response. In this research, it shows that if you use pembrolizumab for against non-small cell lung cancer, if ctDNA increase, they will be have a better overall survival and progression-free. And if the patient continue increase ctDNA after 3 cycles, they will appeal of them have a response. But if they have the decrease of ctDNA, they will have some kind of the response. And if we combine with the ctDNA and imaging by this one by one, we can predict the overall survival of the entire patient. So the final, we also published the validity of our KICCRAC and the ligand of detection of KICCRAC in our gene solution is the VAF more than 0.05, and the detection rate of our test is changing on what kind of cancer, and highest in liver and colorectal, middle in lung cancer, but a little bit low in the breast cancer with luminant, and the window from the we have the MRD positive to the tumor recurrence detection by imaging is about 1 year for colorectal breast cancer. So the final, I will summarize how can we apply MRD for cancer. This is we use the predictive value for the whether we should use the adjuvant therapy mostly for the intermediate group of cancer, and when we have the NCCN guideline or ESMO guideline, should we consider adjuvant therapy? And for some patients have already final decision with adjuvant therapy, you can use MRD for monitoring the early recurrence. And regarding the after the definitive treatment, we can use MRD as a prognosis predictor, the same as tumor marker, but this is a higher sense and sensitivity. So this is we also summarize how can we apply MRD for non-small cell lung cancer. So the last one is I can summarize that with the asymptomatic individual, we develop products so-called SpotMap. With the non-metastatic cancer early, we launched Check-up for MRD monitoring, and with advanced cancer patient, we have a product so-called OncoGS for determining actionable mutation. So thank you very much for your listening.
There were lots of questions for a great talk and a lot of data, and I get the few. So thank you. Very good. Very good talk. And actually, I think we have a lot of questions because we went a little bit behind schedule. And so we move forward to the next talk with the topic is therapy lung cancer with Rosabellet again. And after Rosabellet talk, we have DNA. So if you have any DNA, simply say, and after Rosabellet talk, and also thank Dr. Phạm Nguyễn Quý from Kyoto, Japan to help with the webinar and the installation. So Rosabellet.
Okay, thank you again, and I will talk.
Please.
Okay, thank you. This talk will cover the targeted therapy options in lung cancer, and it is great to see the progress that we do have in the medical genetics platform that can help you very significantly when you treat patients with lung cancer. So we will skip those introduction. So this is what we have, the survival curves in lung cancer about 20 years ago. So median overall survival was really low. And when we use targeted therapy, of course, the median overall survival can reach the 3.5 years. So this is our mandate to diagnose those patients and treat them upon the molecular profiling. Even though PD-L1 is not a classical driver, I think we should definitely approach it as kind of a prediction or directing us to treat patients upon this related receptor blockade. So, and just stay, keep it in your mind that patients with strongly PD-L1 that do not have drivers with a single drug, no chemo, can have a median overall survival of more than 2 years, here 30 months, and with a flattering of survival. So it might be that we can cure those patients with immunotherapy. And when we focus on, for example, the ALK positive patients, we see that retrospective studies, so if we think about prospective, it will be even better. We have a median overall survival of nearly 7 years. Patients with lung cancer, metastatic, positive for ALK, if we treat them by ALK-related therapy, they can reach the median survival of 7 years. And what we have on the ALK arena, we have studies that have kind of a ceiling effect. We cannot, at the moment, we cannot, cross the barrier of having good results. But are we happy with that? Median overall survival of 7 years seems to be good to us, but for a patient who is like 30 years old is not good enough. So we always should do better, but this is our mandate to treat patients upon the molecular profiling. So you're all familiar with those slides. We subclass the disease upon the different molecular profiling, and we do have treatment for all those submutations. Of course, we will not go into the details of all the options therapies, but we should keep in mind that we do have answers to those patients with targeted therapies, and we should seek for those treatments. The molecular profiling, it is clear today that this is the way to go. We have the power to predict response. This is what we should do. And we do have more and more drugs available, not only worldwide, also in the States or Europe, also in here. And I think you have kind of an advantage in the disadvantage that you may have, you can approach to kind of a cheaper drugs across other countries. Of course, it has to go through the MOH process, but you have your unique environment, and the incidence of EGFR positive is so high. So even this is so important to do the molecular profiling and to target those patients with non-smoking related disease in this community. So all of us familiar with the EGFR fast response to targeted therapy. I think we can skip those slides because you all have this here very common. What is important to emphasize, and especially after I've seen few patients here, is that you definitely should, if you follow the NCCN, ESMO, and the international recommendations, the molecular profiling, especially EGFR in this community, should be profiled for all patients, unrelated to smoking habits, unrelated to SQUAM, and because the incidence of smoking here is high enough in order to have high incidence of EGFR positive among smokers. So because it might be that the patient is a smoker, but the lung cancer is not related to the smoking. It is related to the EGFR incidence in this population. So you see that all guidelines talk about, if we focus only on EGFR, it is PCR or FGS, and you can here see the gaps between the different platforms regarding sensitivity. But I think you have a leading group here in medical genetics, and probably do you provide, by the way, do you provide services to the hospitals from the medical genetics here? Dr. Shin? No. Do you provide services in Vietnam?
Yes.
For hospitals? Okay, so that's great. So you can even use local, I mean, the local platform here is so advanced, so why should you stand outside and use very precise molecular profiling? So I presented this case previously, so I don't know why it is occurring again. I will skip the EGFR positive because just in sake of time. And we will talk about other mutations. What is it showing like this? Okay, so just to tell you just a few words about the EGFR positivity as a minimal residual disease. I'm not sure that, I mean, the osimertinib is not reimbursed for adjuvant therapy. But for those patients with that are having surgery for stage 2+, let's say, and having an EGFR positive, you see that what is the impact of Tagrisso post-op on disease-free survival. The rate of recurrence went down by even 7-fold if you put patients on Tagrisso as an adjuvant therapy. The study was done only for 3 years. But of course, it might be that those patients will be on Tagrisso for kind of a lifelong as a prevention. I would say that the next step to see is to find those patients that do need actually Tagrisso adjuvant by using minimal residual disease platform. And I would say that patients with negative platform probably do not gain the same benefit as the general population. And you see here that the ADAMA study of adjuvant therapy per stage, of course, the higher stage is, the higher benefit you get from the adjuvant therapy, which means that basically the disease is systemic from the very beginning and not very localized as we all think at the beginning. But still, I think in sake of resistant development, it might be that there is a point to take out the tumor as much as possible, or at least to do some consolidation. So even though that we treat adjuvant therapies in EGFR positive, you see that the overall survival for these patients is still hasn't been achieved. We also should think about the regions that the study was being performed at, and I mean, postponing the recurrence probably will not gain a survival benefit at this time. But even though patients do not wish to have a disease, and the disease-free survival benefit grows to, I would say, global approval of Tagrisso as an adjuvant therapy in many countries. What about still in the EGFR arena? What do we have on the exon 20 mutation or region? Because it is clear that it is no brainer how to treat patients with common EGFR mutation, but patients with exon 20 mutation do not have at the moment a very attractive, I would say, solution when we go on the treatment arm. There were a few studies, and there are still some ongoing studies on what do we do for those patients with exon 20 mutation. At the moment, amivantamab data, which is a dual antibody that blocks both c-Met and EGFR antibodies, had some data with or without TKIs. CLN-081 as a monotherapy, I have a personal experience with this drug, very promising. Likewise, the furmonertinib, also those three drugs, I would say, are leading at the moment the data that we have on exon 20 mutation. Mobocertinib of Takeda, even though has been approved, has a response rate of around 30–40% in best cases, higher toxicity. Osimertinib is not very active in exon 20, but there are some subgroups in exon 20 that may have some response to osimertinib, and those are kind of not really available on commercial. Poziotinib does have an impact, but it's highly toxic, and those two compounds are still under clinical trial. So I will very briefly will score the mobocertinib data. I think this is the most mature agent for exon 20 and also get some approval as a TKI, as a second line. So mobocertinib is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, and it's designed to focus on exon 20 mutation. Next slide. We have another one like this, because this is not working very well. Okay, so the study of mobocertinib based on accumulated number of patients across the years. What we have here, the PFS, you see that the curves are not as we wish to have in patients that we treat by targeted therapies, but at least we still have some median PFS of 7.3 months for the general cohort that was treated by mobocertinib. We wish it to be higher, but this is what we have at the moment for exon 20. The median overall survival for this cohort was not so bad, was 2 years. So it is much better than the median PFS. We have published real-world data efficacy for patients with exon 20 that we have treated with mobocertinib. You see that the response rate is not very high, and it was kind of a disappointing. It is less than 30% of response rate, which is not similar to what was published in the clear previous study design. So in general, my feeling is that mobocertinib is not going to bring us the solution for patients with exon 20 mutation. Okay, so some example of what we do with patients with exon 20. So you see that the purple is patients at the moment getting chemotherapy. Some of them are getting mobocertinib, and they do have stable disease. Some do have some partial responses, but still median PFS is about 5.6 months. But many thanks to those patients that were treated not only by mobocertinib, by poziotinib. So our experience is good with poziotinib, but very, very high toxic to this drug. What about ALK? Well, I would say that among all the driver mutations, ALK positivity is maybe also red positive patients have a very durable responses to the ALK-related therapy. About what we know about ALK today is that, is that ALK testing is available and it is standard of care. And luckily, immunohistochemistry can detect it in a very low expense. So I guess that immunohistochemistry has been done also here in most centers. Most liquid platforms cover ALK aberrations. TKI first line is covered worldwide. There are also first and second generation, and the third generation, lorlatinib actually, has been approved for first line recently. There are very clear resistant mechanisms to ALK, and most of them are like point mutation on the ALK gene. So those patients, unlike the EGFR, usually would present a resistant mutation across the ALK point mutation. We discussed the prolonged median overall survival for these patients, and I guess that if we start treatment with a better drugs compared to crizotinib, we will have even better results compared of the retrospective cohorts that we have had. When we are using lorlatinib, actually, you see here in this slide the different ALK blockers like crizotinib, ceritinib, alectinib, brigatinib, and lorlatinib, and you see the different point mutations, and you see that the higher we go on the point mutation, like you see, this is like 1196, this is 1200, etc. It would be more difficult to block the ALK pocket. And therefore, lorlatinib at the moment is the most wide, I would say, inhibitor that can cover most of the ALK sub-mutation. There are still some open issues in ALK-related therapy. First, what is the optimal treatment sequence? Should we go first, second, third generation? Or should we use best drug up front and stay without any solution when patient is progressing? Of course, there is also some expense issues that we should discuss with the families. Should immunotherapy play a role in management of ALK-positive patients? My personal opinion, of course, they do not. but there are still some trials that are trying to knock down with a different type of immunotherapy, but the current checkpoint inhibitors do not have any impact on patients with ALK positivity, also on progression. Is there a cure for ALK positive patients? It seems to be like a classical TKI, even though patients have a complete response, they do need the ALK-related blockade in a certain dose. It doesn't have to be a high dose, but definitely those patients need a blockade of ALK positivity. The reason I'm mentioning it because many of the patients are young ladies. The ALK TKI may cause some, leg edema and some weight gaining, and they may reduce the dose. But many of the patients do not wish to take drugs lifelong, and then they have kind of a recurrence. What are the future of molecular testing in ALK positivity, specifically in drug resistant? I think it may play a significant role in the future. And how can we overcome the mechanism for ALK inhibitors? This is not very clear picture because at the moment we have only lorlatinib. But I guess that we may use some conjugated drugs in the next future to overcome long-term resistance. And I would like to take you kind of a very short journey, just for example, for an ALK patient. This is a patient that was diagnosed in 2011, 33 years old, never smoker, global effusion and tamponade. On biopsy, it was right lower lobe lesion with a pleural disease, and it was positive for ALK. And that was one of the first patients that were full next generation sequence that identified intron deletion. And he was actually negative on ALK fish testing at that time. Immunohistochemistry was not done in 2011. And on progression on chemo, we have sent his tissue to FMI just for molecular profiling, and we identified intron deletion that normally we thought intron is not important for cancer-related therapies, but we put him on crizotinib, and you see that even though it was kind of an intron deletion, that's why the fish fusion was negative, because there is no fusion. So the patient was responding very well to ALK-related therapy, and it was then crizotinib. Down the road, the patient has developed multiple brain metastases because crizotinib is not penetrating well the brain. And unfortunately, 2013, probably, and even earlier, he had all brain radiation. But as you see here, all brain radiation did not do much. And therefore, I've asked the patient to, instead of taking crizotinib 1 tablet twice daily, I asked the patient, okay, take it 2 tablets once daily. And we were able to penetrate the brain, and we had a significant brain response using the same TKI. So we just changed the treatment schedule, penetrating the brain in a better way, and he has a very good responses to this ALK-related therapy. However, the patient was again progressing, and you see this brain lesion, and you see that he came with fevers, and in this time he was treated with ceritinib that had excellent brain penetration and has a brain again complete response. So it means that ALK patient is always ALK patient, and here we are facing pharmacokinetic barrier and not mechanistic barrier to treat the ALK. So that's why he was treated by ceritinib for another actually 3 or even 3.5 years with ceritinib. And as you know, ceritinib is very high toxic drug. Thereafter, he was treated by brigatinib, just in sake of toxicity, not because of efficacy. And it looks like 10 years on ALK-related therapy, which is really very impressive. And this is what we see in those ALK-positive patients. The patient was then had kind of a mild progression as treated by lorlatinib, but unfortunately he passed away about a few months, 1 year ago actually, but not because of lung cancer, because of COVID pandemic. So that's really kind of a bad end for this patient. Another story with ALK-positive patient is this young lady. She was diagnosed in 2013, had a lobectomy, adjuvant therapy, but had numerous brain lesions post-op. 2013, I put her on crizotinib with a good brain responses, even though crizotinib does not have excellent brain penetration. Then she shifted to ceritinib because of some progression, has developed tamponade as a side effect of ceritinib. Then she moved to alectinib for 5 years, and now she's on lorlatinib. What is interesting here that you see that those patients can be manageable without brain radiation and with sequence of ALK-related therapies. So ALK is always ALK, and this is when they have a very good and prolonged responses. Actually, she is asymptomatic and she continues alectinib more than actually ALK-related therapy for many years. We can go again, and you can easily go to NCCN guidelines. We will not go into details, but ROS1 positive patients would be same stories, like blocking the ROS, you get good response. But in ROS, compared to the other, we do not have many successful second-line generations. If we focus on ROS, we have entrectinib, crizotinib, this is what we have. Sometimes ceritinib, but on progression, we do not have some evidence of very successful therapies. Regarding RET fusion, I do not know if you have RET fusion on the standard panel here. Is it existing? In your institute, probably yes, but I'm not on the clinical service if RET fusion is done. RET is a very tricky aberration because it is not only related to lung. And this is the first treatment, actually, or I would say target that was proven upon molecular profiling unrelated to the solid tumor. So the treatment for RET, I mean, those patients may have existing on thyroid cancer, pancreas cancer, salivary, colorectal, etc. So it would be very difficult to sequence all those patients for RET fusion because the treatments would be much more expensive than the therapy because the chances that we will get RET fusion is very low if we see less than 1% in all those cancers. So in most countries, RET fusion is not being screened for many of those patients unless we do it without kind of a wet platform. And I can discuss it some in other opportunity about AI based on H&E to have kind of a molecular profiling. There are some data about selpercatinib, which has been approved, a very excellent drug, LOXO 292. I'm sure that you're familiar with this data. Very easy drug, minimal side effects. I have patients on selpercatinib, I would say more than 6 years already, and very prolonged and durable responses. Unfortunately, it is not reimbursed here, so I'm sure that, is it available in Vietnam? Even out of pocket? Okay, so of course you have excellent response rate and durable responses, but it is not available. So maybe we can just go very quickly about the slides. Okay, just to show you some responses of RET related. The responses to RET blockade is very significant, it's very fast, even within a few days. And I have few patients that have developed, that had a RET positive, and they had an impact within 3-4 days. And this is really a very significant clinical experience that those patients have. Pralsetinib is a Roche company drug for red positivity, and as you see also, many patients with complete responses and very high response rate to the drug once red is positive. NCCN guideline for BRAF, you do have the dabrafenib and trametinib available. BRAF V600E behaves in a different way. I mean, it's not like a classical driver like RED, ALK, ROS, EGFR that have a prolonged and durable responses. BRAF is an aggressive disease, and the duration of therapy is not very long, unfortunately. But still, we can see a high rate of response rate. There are different regimens, and I understand that dabrafenib and trametinib is available here, right, in Vietnam. No? For MET exon 14 skip mutation, again, should be screened on the platform. The capmatinib and tepotinib are proven and FDA registered for this disease, but also crizotinib can be used for these patients with a very long duration of responses. So if those drugs are not available, you can always use crizotinib. And I will skip, so the impact of molecular profiling is highly important. And just to summarize this talk, is that molecular profiling is crucial in lung cancer. There is 5-year survival in so many patients with targeted therapy. So this is why we have to chase actually the molecular profiling. There are numerous routes to treat the disease, and our aim is to bring the patients to the future line. And this is why I think the driver is so important. And of course, hope is always exists for those patients. And as Dr. Moore has suggested, we will keep the questions maybe to the later session, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the talk. Q&A. So if anyone here have any questions, please go ahead. And we also have many viewers from the webinar, so you can send questions to us. So please go ahead. Do you have any questions?
Professor, thank you very much. It was so interesting to see all your cases, and especially somebody where you use double targeted therapy. I know this debate always come up, and it has come up maybe even years ago when somebody has an EGFR and an ALK or EGFR with a MET. Then would we always try to block both? I mean, logically, we should be blocking both. Just as you say, we have tumor heterogeneity and we need to block different clones. So knowing that there will be increased side effects, but intuitively, I also think that I would want to block both and give double targeted therapy. Appreciate your views on that.
So I think having double driver is very rare phenomenon. There was one case presented to me yesterday that has double drivers. We do see it as a resistant clone, and I think it's very uncommon as the naive condition. So, I mean, regarding double blockade, I mean, we at the moment, we are limited with kind of a toxicity, of course. I think if the disease is not very aggressive, I would rather prefer to do first blockade. And then if we are not satisfied with the outcome, or if it can be monitored by liquid biopsy to see if we knock down one clone, and then there is a point to add another clone, I would go for the double blockade. But I think this is kind of an isolated cases that you have to treat it by, case by case. But in general, I do not see many patients with double effective blockades from the very beginning. I must say that we do see many patients with numerous aberrations, and those patients normally do not get benefit from a specific mutation, and they normally use chemo, or they have a high TMB, and at some point to use immunotherapy. But for a case that was presented to me day before yesterday with ALK and EGFR, same allele frequency, which was kind of an interesting. I think there is a way to do it like a gradually.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense too. With the liquid biopsy, actually, it's very helpful.
Thank you, Professor, for your very nice presentation. So can I ask you regarding the liquid biopsy with the liquid detection regarding VAF? So how can you determine the VAF in variety of subtype liquids such as plus and pleural fluid, now sometimes the CSF? So are there any variety of VAF used in your experience in Israel?
So normally we are not using pleural CSF for liquid for gene analysis. Most of the labs are not very happy to take the challenge. Pleural diffusion is much easier because we are able to get kind of a cell block. So it would be even easier to do a gene analysis of pleural diffusion. And that's true. I mean, there is a limit of detection of molecular profiling while using a liquid, mainly because of flow shedding. But but liquid biopsy is not the isolated platform. It is a complementary platform at the moment, and we seek to get it solid.
Yeah, thank you. And it's liquid is hot. So we have a question from Dr. Lee from Kyoto, Japan regarding the spot mark test, and Dr. Lee asked that so it's a prospective trial, right? Cross-sectional trial, the spot mark.
Regarding our clinical trial, so for kidney, this is a perspective in the clinical volunteer, but in our literature, I just mentioned you that this is the interim report of our research with the 3,000 people, and we just determine BDV and the accuracy of GO and the final result of the research. Extend to the 10,000 volunteer will be published in the end of the year with especially you want the positive and negative in the community and people.
So according to your data, so about 2,780, 2,800 healthy volunteers, and you detect 13 cancer patients, right? So actually, the percentage of the number of patients, it's not. I think it's still too low compared to like lung cancer screening about 2.4, but it is less than 0.5%. So any.
Yes, if in the healthy people that our positive percentage of the ctDNA just about 0.5%. Yes, so it is so that's why PPV just 60%, and you know that PPV it depends not only on test but only on the prevalence of cancer. So that's why this is a little bit low, but comparing with another conventional procedure such as tumor marker, it can improve in the BPD cancer.
Yeah, and Dr. We also have a question not because 2,800 cases and 13 cases of cancer, but no lung cancer, and only 6 cases with the rectal cancer, right? And Dr. We have mentioned have some comment that compared to conventional way like fecal blood test or low dose CAT scan for lung cancer. So I do see any advantage of screening with ctDNA. And should we recommend to do the ctDNA screening with the other protein? And how would you prove the detection rate?
So this is very interesting comment regarding our test for the cancer screening. So you know that now that WCT is a conventional imaging screening in cancer and been approved by FDA. But we in some cases, patient they afraid of the radiation exposure or afraid of the high rate of the false positive, or if they want to have multi-cancer early detection, they can join this SPOTMAP. So it means that SPOTMAP cannot be replaced by the conventional imaging, but just the support on some additional matter with the imaging we use in the clinical activity.
Professor Beck, you have any comment on that?
Yes, I think as Dr. Shin has said at the moment, I think it is not replacing imaging, but the pan cancer approach seems to be like moving forward. I mean, by many platforms, not only for lung cancer. I mean, the pan cancer, the advantage is that you can do like population screening. And I think the test at the moment, the test is very expensive, so I don't see it coming as I mean, screening test like pan cancer should cost you $10, not $1,000. So at the moment, what the main barrier I think is funding, and to do kind of pan cancer tests like RAIL or Gallery or others is like $1,000 or $2,000 per test. This is a barrier, not focusing on lung cancer only, but pan cancer. So for blood tests at the moment for screening for lung cancer, it should be low dose tests and then liquid. But I guess that within the next 10 years it will change.
Just a slightly different sideline on this is the topic of insurance, because it is very relevant, especially in Singapore when things are so expensive, even chicken rice. So I always tell patients to make sure they buy full insurance first, wait 3 months before they go for all this testing. Of course, unless they have symptoms and all that kind of stuff. It's very concerning if they suddenly just come for blood test and then finally they found something. They're caught off guard and then they don't know how they're going to go for the treatment and all that. In fact, usually the first consultation, I think their biggest worry is how much is the treatment. Maybe it's a Singapore problem, but I think worldwide with all this immunotherapy as well. But it shouldn't stop them from getting diagnosed early if they have symptoms and all that. But it's just a small side thing. But it's a very relevant thing in our modern society now. And with all this drug reimbursement and all that, I think it's very important, even in Vietnam coming up with insurance coverage and all that.
The question regarding people usually
So this is very interesting mention regarding the application of MRD in lung cancer, and we can see that for the prognosis value, the solid data regarding of the survival between the positive and negative MRD after post-medical treatment. But regarding the predictive, we have almost pure data. What can we do after the surgery? MRD is still positive. So now there are some clinical trial. They they can to personalize the value of MRD for escalation or de-escalation of adjuvant therapy based on the dynamic of MRD. So we hope that in some clinical trial and phase 3, we will continue to develop how can we use the concentration of DNA to up and down our adjuvant therapy and how long does it take, and the endpoint is clearance of MRD or not. Yeah.
In terms of like diaphragm of rearrangement with the low fluorescence to patient still live with the disease for a long time. So any comment for MRD possibility?
I think, as I mentioned, the MLD is going to be not an MLD, it's going to be part of the staging platform. And I think when a patient is going to have MLD plus, so his stage will be 4, or maybe 4A. And then they should be treated as a stage 4 for a period of time. So I think it should be kind of a standard discriminator biomarker before we go for adjuvant therapy.
So any comment to go? MRD?
Yeah, no, it's such an upcoming thing, and I really agree that it really should move higher and higher up frontline testing, especially when we treat so many patients adjuvantly. After the treatment is finished, the patient always says, "How do I know it's gone?" And we don't. And only MRD will tell. PET scan is going to tell you that it's gone. I can tell you radiologically it's gone. It's never there anyway before surgery. Otherwise, we would have gone for curative surgery. But after that, I treat a lot of breast patients as well. I have no way of telling them that without the MRD testing, that all the cancers are gone and they'll forever be free of recurrence.
Thank you very much. So liquid is product, very important. And blood test screening cancer is still in very preliminary phase, and also for MRD. So with higher cancer, blood stage cancer to be used, and also the very for this kind of cancer is very important. So So I think we take a 20-minute break. So we have some coffee and snack outside. So we enjoy the break time and get back here after 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Lô. Không không không. Dạ, cảm ơn.
Dạ đến giờ giải lao lát nữa là sẽ vào lại nha. Anh chị đợi xíu.
Chị không dậy sớm như một hôm còn lại đấy ạ. Bon ngồi lên